Welcome back to the second part of Chapter 12. And in the second part of the textbook chapter, we are just going to look at changes across just different stages of learning. And there are several different ones listed here. So your assignment for this is to be taking each one of these performer and performer changes across the stages of learning and talk about what it might look like for a beginner and then what it would look like for someone who is more advanced, an expert. So for instance, when we talk about rate of improvement, the concept of rate of improvement, what's that look like for a performer at the beginning stages of learning? And then what's that look like for a performer at the more proficient expert level of performance? So take each one of these, and that would be your homework assignment for this part of the chapter, and you can turn that in online. As we finish up, I do want to just give you one concept here, some final thoughts as we finish up stages of learning chapter 12. And this predicting performance for later learning stages. There's always the idea that we can predict someone's level of proficiency by watching them as a beginner. And so we see someone as a beginner who seems to be catching on quickly, doing well. We automatically think that's going to be a more elite type athlete. And so can we predict performance during the initial stage? And research shows that it's really not a good predictor for performance during later stages. I know that kind of goes against what we think. I know as an elementary teacher, I used to look at my elementary PE students and think I could pick out who were going to be the great athletes when they got up to high school. But the research does not support that at all. So the question, does initial learning relate to later learning? They've done correlation studies where they would take the performance scores of a beginner with performance scores later on in the skill development learning process. And they would correlate all those practice trials together. And they found that there was a low correlation between the initial practice trials and the later practice trials. So that does not support the idea that you could predict your elite athletes when they first begin. There was a juggling study done by Tressel, and it was in showing beginning scores of juggling and being able to predict successful jugglers, and that was only successful 50% of the time. So again, as you get into your juggling lab for this week, don't get frustrated at all because you may not be doing well here at the beginning. It's really no indication whether or not you would be a successful juggler if you kept at it. Remember when we talk about inter-trial correlation, we're talking about relationship between trials. The closer the trials are together, the more they will be correlated. And again, in the studies that have been done, early performance was not a good predictor for later success. So for this week, just make sure you get your lecture and homework assignments done, as well as the juggling lab. And the juggling lab is over a 5-day period, so just make sure you get started on that early. And I hope it will demonstrate to you the stages of learning a new skill. As always, if you have any questions, just let me know.